Joining us now is Douglas Holtz-Eakin, president of the American Action Forum and former CBO director under President George W. Bush. He was also economic advisor to Senator John McCain's 2008 presidential campaign, and he joins us from Washington. Douglas, welcome back to Bottom Line. Always a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
Douglas, let's get right to it. You have 4 principles for effective jobs. What are they?
Well, first of all, no more short-term stimulus. Stimulus is something you have to turn on and then turn off. No Congress, Republican or Democrats, ever been very adept at that, so we should have to try a different approach. Second thing you want to do is you really want to focus on the business community. The business community has the financial wherewithal. It is ultimately the place where we're going to create jobs. Everyone agrees on that. So we really need to give it a policy structure that makes it possible for them to hire. Third is you must attack the debt explosion at every turn. Sailing straight toward a financial crisis is unwise policy and is a real negative for jobs. And finally, we need to clarify the path of future policy. Everyone knows we need to end up with a fundamental tax reform that doesn't tax repatriations, has a lower corporate rate, broadens bases. Let's show a timeline to getting there if we can't do it all at once.
Douglas, it would seem that the path of least resistance would be number 3, attack the debt explosion. But with so much tension and so much partisan back and forth in Washington, is that even possible? And as I asked a prior guest, Dr. Susan Collins of the University of Michigan, is that even possible 14 months before a presidential election?
You know, it simply has to be. We cannot repeat our history where we kick this down the road. We're already in the range where we have, gross debt 90% of GDP, the kinds of numbers where countries get in trouble. So, and it will get worse before it gets better. So it really is an imperative that we do some sensible things. For example, Social Security reform would be a way to let future retirees know exactly what the deal will be. They will not face a draconian across-the-board cut when they retire. It would take some red ink out of the federal budget and send the right signal to our international creditors, and it would have no near-term impacts. All this worry about cutting spending in a recovery. So that's the kind of thing we ought to be doing right now, and that's what the president should be leading on.
Douglas, during his speech today in Minneapolis, the Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke said that there needs to be a metric to establishing policy success. In your opinion, what might that metric be?
Well, if you really want to look at something, you should be looking at debt over GDP, because we know debt's the problem. You have to have it go down. We know growth has been anemic and substandard, so the denominator has to go up. Anytime you see the ratio of debt to GDP shrinking, we're doing the right things.
Douglas, the plan from initial reports that the president's going to propose tonight is about $300 billion. Is that enough to make a dent in this problem?
I think it frames it the wrong way. It's not a number. It's a philosophy. I expect to be underwhelmed by the substance of the president's proposals.
Why do you say that?
We're going to see warmed-over initiatives. Well, these are going to be warmed-over initiatives on extending unemployment insurance, extending payroll tax breaks, new promises that infrastructure spending can happen. Yes, we promise really quickly and be productive, and that's unlikely. There may be a new training program, but we already have 47 of them, and there are 6 million people who are long-term unemployed. How many will it help? So I don't view this as substantively too useful. It's not a philosophy that says we're going to make deep fundamental changes and commit to grow quickly. It's more one-time measures that are largely political in nature.
But Douglas, again, going back to the political reality of the situation, whatever the president proposes tonight, what can make it through Congress if he feels there's going to be roadblocks? The White House is already saying that if the Republican majority in the House of Representatives isn't on board with what the president says, that he will take this directly to the American people.
The president controls the White House and the bully pulpit. The Democrats control the Senate. He is hardly in a minority position. There is in place a super committee with expedited procedures to consider legislation. So this is an opportunity for any president to lead on important issues, to take the bull by the horns and deal with entitlement reform, deal with tax reform. There's an opportunity to get it through on an expedited basis. That would mean bipartisan initiatives, and the president needs to show he can do that.
Speaking of leadership, do you expect that from that bipartisan super committee? Will they, in fact, show leadership on some of the tough choices that need to be made? Do they have the political will to do that?
I'd say it's an open question at the moment, but I'm optimistic that they can take on the entitlement programs in particular, where the spending really will be a threat to the vitality of the U.S. economy. But as I said before, on large programs like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, it requires White House leadership to get real changes. This is an opportunity. Since the legislative road has been leveled by the super committee, it's easier to get things through. I await the president to step up and make some proposals.
Douglas, if Congress and the president can't get on board on this, and a lot of people are skeptical, especially given what happened during that whole debt ceiling debate. If Congress and the president can't get on board with this, what role does American business have to help jumpstart this economy?
Well, in the end, it is the key. We know that households are strapped with debt, that our government programs are bleeding red ink at the federal, state, and local level. We cannot export our way out of this problem as much as international competitiveness is desirable and useful. That leaves by process of elimination the business community. They have the financial wherewithal. They are at the heart of the jobs process. We need to give them some confidence in the future and a commitment to good policy so that they can push forward. In the current environment with a lot of, real partisan divides, it's difficult for them to discern the future, and that's hurt.
Douglas, if I could ask you quickly in 30 seconds, last night's Republican presidential debate, what did you think?
Truth is, I missed it. I have one going off to college. Packing is way more important than debates.
Douglas Holtz-Eakin, president of the American Action Forum, joining us from Washington. Douglas, always a pleasure. Thanks so much.